Hey, Smirk here. There's a certain kind of game Buya and I seem to gravitate to, because today's game that we want to talk about is called Succubus with Guns.
The game is not misleading. You play as a succubus with guns. Who'd have thought?
And more, because she doesn't just use guns, believe it or not. Succubus with Guns came out on October 8th, 2021, and was developed and published by Sattercat. Sattercat? Suttercat? Anyway, the game's normally priced at $15 US, and it currently has 59 total reviews, with roughly 33 of those being positive and roughly 26 of those being negative, leaving the game with a total 55% recommendation rating. Before we really get started, it's worth mentioning there's no sexual content in this game, so don't get it twisted. And by it, I mean your testes. In this game, you play as a nameless succubus with big ol' anime biddies and one hell of a seductive sway. For the mainline story, you're introduced to a scene where a ritual is occurring, and through some comedic oddity, a ritual performer trips and fucks up the whole thing and causes unrest among the land. Succubitty realizes what she must do, so she picks up her trusty assault rifle and gets on to cleansing the realms. This game features 6 levels in addition to a tutorial level. For me, it took roughly 4 hours for me to finish the 7 levels, and about 4.5 hours in total to get all 18 achievements. It took Buya a little under 3 hours to complete all the levels, and about 3 hours and 10 minutes to get all the achievements. I did end up playing the game substantially longer, and that was because of the game's endless mode, which is an entirely different experience. Long story short, it has a leaderboard and it took me 2.5 hours to make it to the top 10. In the story levels, you gain weapons slowly and defeat a certain wave of enemies, followed by a boss to advance to the next level. In endless mode, enemies spawn and paste out waves, and you gather materials that they drop to purchase weapons, ammo, and other buildables like traps and turrets. Some enemies will randomly drop ammunition or hearts that refill your health. For the game itself, the enemies featured in the story mode vary in difficulty. They're either melee or ranged, some are bigger to indicate they have more health, and some of them have advanced weaponry that can do a significant amount of damage to you. Ammo can seem limited in some instances, but if you want to be efficient, score headshots to lay some extra damage on enemies, but they don't always mean it's an instant kill. For other mentionables, the game does feature stamina, which is used for sprinting, jumping, rolling, or melee attacks. Weapons are accessed via the number line on a keyboard. I'm not quite sure what it would be on a controller, because unfortunately my Xbox controller didn't work in the game, but it did on the menu. Lastly, in story mode, the game does feature the ability to respawn, which is removed if you change your difficulty to the hardest available. Respawning isn't actually explained in the game, but it didn't seem unintuitive. Essentially, pick up red balls after you die. Each red ball is 10% of your health, and you'll respawn after 30 seconds if you pick up at least one.
You can stop at 5 or 6
red balls,
or just one.
You can't pick up more than 10, so once you pick up 10, you just kinda awkwardly hang around in the afterlife for the almighty one to check your hand for a stamp to return to the party. There's also an autosave function without a manual saving function being present in the game. In story mode, it saves at the beginning of each level, and for endless, it saves when you exit the mode or every 10 waves. If you die in endless mode, you can go back to the last save and continue from it. There's only one save slot for each story and endless modes, but the saves are separate from one another. And that's about it for all the foundation, so let's talk about what we liked. When it comes to commendations, both Buya and I chose to commend the graphics of the game.
The succubus is sexy, but she's just not Morgan from Darkstalkers. The boob physics for this game are out of this world. You can crouch and those things go flying, which is probably why there's an option to toggle the boob physics. The level design kinda sucks though. The levels are kind of large, but it's cool that they all have different settings. Many of the enemies are just reskins of each other, but I'm glad their skins fit the themes of their respective levels.
And I can echo his points, whether it's the boob animation, level design, or enemy skins. The lighting is also nice. For another commendation, I chose to commend the game's enjoyability. So the thing I gotta give the biggest commendation to is the enjoyment I got from endless mode. I enjoyed that mode way more than the story mode. It was challenging at first since you need to strategically engage with enemies as you build up some means to defend yourself, but there were several points of my 2.5 hour trek into endless mode where my friends were surprised to learn I was still playing the game.
Oh my god, you're still playing?
Did you think I stopped?
I was gone for a while.
I really wanted to get top 10 though. Not sure if I'm still there by the time you're watching this video, but I have my screenshot, and I've asked for it to be a talking point in any future eulogies as one of my proudest accomplishments. To add on just a little bit more to the enjoyment aspect, it's easy for endless mode to feel like it's been beaten, especially if you throw buildable turrets all over the place to spawn camp the enemies. But every once in a while, the game will spawn a metric ass ton of golems to break your monopoly on murder up. It keeps things interesting. That's really about it, so let's move on to what we liked a little less. When it comes to criticisms, Buya and I had consistent views all the way down. We'll start by talking about the story. It does contain a story spoiler, if that's something you greatly value. If it is, skip over the timestamp on your screen now. Alright, 3, 2, 1, let's go.
I don't even know if there's a story for this game. It starts out with a dude carrying a basket of bananas or something, and he trips at an altar. All of a sudden, he and the sexy girls near him are turned into zombies. You then awake hella sexy as a succubus you play as, and go through a quick tutorial. And as soon as that's complete, you are thrown into the wave survival, which is the rest of the game. There's no other explanation as to why you are there, or why you have to fight these enemies. After completing the final level, the succubus grows her wings, finally, and flies back home to her bed. The end. And now we wait for the sequel. Succubus Akimbo.
And I echoed his point pretty much entirely. There's no indication if succubitty just wanted to go out and settle old scores by inflicting genocide, or if all these vastly different enemies were somehow related to the screwed up ritual. After the story, we both found it appropriate to criticize the game's sound direction. There's really only one song in the whole game, and it's the same song you hear at the main menu, and it is so incredibly faint to the point where it's easy to miss. There's no new music for boss battles, different biomes, or even between story mode and endless mode. Then succubitty, for some reason, has to say these random lines at random intervals.
Oh, I will never leave you.
This can sometimes lead to some bits of humor with comedic timing.
I love you.
The sound effects are fine, but everything else that's eaten by your ears is incredibly underwhelming. Buya had resounded my statement about sound, so we'll move on to the most disappointing aspect of the game, which we found was the overall gameplay. There are some branching subtopics within the gameplay that we each lowlighted.
The gameplay for Succubus with guns is extremely repetitive. I played through the game on normal, and there really wasn't any challenge, but it took an extremely long time to beat many levels. I would have to sometimes search for the last few enemies of a wave who were stuck at their spawn not doing anything. I think if there were fewer waves in each level, then it would be a much better experience. Endless mode I think is a lot better than the story mode, but by the time I completed the story, I just didn't want to play anymore.
When it comes to the AI being easily manipulatable, this only really applies to story mode, but it's easy to get on a vertical platform against enemies and take them out one by one. Not so much the case for ranged enemies, of course, but most bosses possess the same weakness where you can get them caught up on terrain and then just senselessly blow their faces off. And as far as melee combat goes, you can mostly get away with just backing up versus enemies, stop for a second, melee, and continue backing up. You'll come out unscathed most of the time, and that's mostly how I got past level 2, which, speaking of, some of the story levels force you into specific weapon paths. Level 2 and level 5 are the greatest offenders. Level 2 forces you to pick up a sword, even though you had guns in the previous level. The game is called Succubus with guns, god damn it. It's not called Succubus with sword, or Succubus with various weapons of a lethal type. Your weapons and ammo are supposed to carry over. That's the whole reason ammunition is available in the second level, so that you can use it on level 3. However, level 5 erases all of your collected ammo, but you get to keep your weapons and pick up ammo on the level itself. It's a really inconsistent experience that has no backstory provided to it, so it's just an artificial obstacle that backhands the gaming experience. Also, for whatever reason, the plasma gun on level 5 isn't present in endless mode, just like how the bow and arrow from endless mode isn't present in the story mode. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about were bugs, one of which is in endless mode. You can buy something, and if you close your buy screen too fast, you actually won't get the item. This seems to take place most commonly with buildables, such as turrets or traps. This does become avoidable with some conscious thought, but if you don't pick up on this, it can really diminish your experience. For another much worse bug is that there's a bug where you can shoot enemies into the ground. You shoot them into hell, as literal as that can be. If you shoot an enemy into the ground and it wasn't a killing blow, you can no longer continue the level and will need to be reset, since the next wave will not spawn until everyone from the previous wave is dead. Bullets and explosives don't seem to have any penetration behind environment pieces, so you're really hard stuck. This did happen to me twice, and it happened both times with the shotgun, so maybe just avoid shooting down enemies with that if you decide you want to play, okay? That's all the stuff we wanted to talk about, so let's top this off with the total recap and rating. When it comes to commendations, we gave Succubus with Guns 3 in total. 2 for graphics, and 1 for enjoyment. We both found the graphics easy to look at, and one of us found a lot of joy in the game's Zenless mode. To consider this game's criticisms, we gave it 6 in total. 2 for story, 2 for sound, and 2 for gameplay. We found the story, while somewhat present, lacking detail to help some things make sense. We also found the choice of only offering a singular song, plus some odd, random talking lines, incredibly underwhelming. Then lastly, the gameplay had bouts of flaws that made the experience a bit jarring. Whether it was the pacing or repetition of story mode, or the manipulatable AI, unexplained weapon limitations on certain levels, or inconvenient and game-breaking bugs being present to really shit on the experience. Out of the 2 reviewers, one recommended the game if it was on sale, while the other did not recommend it at all. I'd score Succubus with Guns a 4 out of 10, with it being closer to a 5 than a 3. I can recommend Succubus with Guns under the condition if it was dramatically reduced in price, or was on sale around the $5 tier. $15 is a hard no otherwise, but I'd be straight up lying to say I didn't enjoy Endless Mode. It'd be unjustifiable at its current price tag though.
I had to give Succubus with Guns a 1.5 out of 5. The gameplay was just so repetitive due to the many waves, and many of the weapons just felt too similar to each other. There's really no music in this game, and I honestly don't know why the story is only explained with 2 cutscenes.
Alright, that's all we've got. Hopefully you found this video an overall positive contribution to society. If not, well, might I recommend playing Succubus with Guns? Don't forget to like the video if you like the video, feel free to comment your thoughts, and subscribe if you want to see my future content. Feel free to slap that bell's thick ass if you want to receive notifications for future videos.
Succubus.